house at the end of Willow Lane. The first thing I remember is the silence. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that presses against your skull until you can hear your own pulse drumming in your ears. The town had always been quiet, but lately it was different. The air hung still. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. I'd been living at the edge of Willow Lane for as long as I could remember, in a house with peeling white paint and curtains that never opened. My caretaker, an old man with hands that trembled when he poured his morning coffee, hadn't spoken much in recent weeks. He used to hum, whistle, call out my name when he came home. But lately, only silence. Every night, he sat in his armchair, staring at the dark television screen, as if waiting for it to show something. Sometimes he whispered, low and broken, words I couldn't make out. Then the smell started. It was faint at first, sour, earthy, like rain on rust. But soon it became stronger, sharp and clinging. I scratched at the floorboards, trying to find where it came from. The old man only stared at me with those hollow eyes. On the third night, the lights went out. The air grew heavy. I could hear things moving in the walls, soft shuffling, quiet breathing. I looked at the corners, growled into the emptiness. The old man didn't react. He just whispered, "Stop it. You'll wake her." Her? I didn't sleep. Every creak in the floorboards felt alive. Every whisper of wind against the window sounded like someone calling my name. I pressed my head against the door, listening. Something was outside. Soft steps circling the house, slow and patient. When morning came, the old man was gone. The chair still rocked, though no one sat in it. The front door hung open. I stepped outside, but the street was deserted. The neighbors' houses were dark, curtains drawn. No cars passed. The whole town seemed dead. I wandered, searching for him. The smell was everywhere now, stronger, thicker. It coated my tongue, filled my lungs. I followed it to the edge of town where the woods began. That's when I saw her, a figure standing between the trees, still as stone. Pale skin, long hair matted with dirt. Her head tilted slowly, and though she was far away, I swear I heard her voice right beside me. "Come back inside." My legs trembled. I whimpered, backing away. But my body moved without my will. Back through the streets, back to the old house. The front door creaked open before I touched it. The smell was unbearable now. Inside, the armchair faced me. The old man was there, or what was left of him. Eyes gone, face gray, a dark stain spreading across his chest. And on the floor beside him, my bowl, empty. I remember now. He hadn't left me. He'd fed me. The whispers, the smell, the thing in the walls. It wasn't the house that was hungry, it was me. I tilt my head, watching his still body, the faint warmth still clinging to it. I wag my tail once, slowly. The figure in the woods stands behind me now. I can hear her breathing. "Good boy," she whispers. Through her eyes. The barking had stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound ever was. A thick humming quiet that pressed against the walls of the house like a living thing. Mara stood in the hallway, her bare feet cold against the tiles, staring at the back door that swayed slightly open. The night wind moved through it in shallow breaths, carrying the smell of rain and something else, something metallic. She whispered his name. "Buddy?" And the word felt foreign in her throat. The house had been filled with his sounds only moments ago. The nails on the floorboards, the soft whine at the door, that constant comforting presence. Now only the refrigerator hummed. Mara stepped outside. The yard was darker than usual, the storm clouds swallowing the moon. Her flashlight flickered, catching glimpses of muddy prints leading toward the trees at the edge of the property. Not paw prints, footprints, bare ones. Her stomach turned. "Buddy?" She tried again, but her voice didn't travel far. It broke, shattering against the branches and dying there. Then she heard it, a low whimper, close, near the old shed. She ran, the beam of her flashlight bouncing wildly, until it caught something pale beneath the half-rotted door. A tail. Still. Mara fell to her knees, pushing the door open, her breath stuttering. The air inside was damp, reeking of mold and copper. Buddy lay there unmoving, his eyes wide open, staring not at her, but past her, as if still watching something. His mouth hung slightly ajar, teeth bared, not in a snarl, but in confusion. She reached for him with shaking hands. His fur was cold. Behind her, the flashlight dimmed, flickered, and then steadied again. For a brief moment, in that flicker, she saw something reflected in the window opposite the shed. A figure, tall, human-shaped, but wrong, its limbs too long, the posture too hunched. It was standing by her house, watching. Mara's breath hitched. When she turned around, there was nothing, only the night pressing close. She stumbled backward, heart pounding, dragging Buddy's limp body out of the shed. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. She only knew she had to get back inside. Lock the doors, call someone. But as she crossed the yard, she saw the footprints again. Not just leading into the trees, but circling the house, looping back and stopping right by her back door. That door had been open when she came outside. Her throat tightened. Slowly, she turned her head toward the house. Through the kitchen window, she saw movement, a faint shadow slipping past the light. Something was inside. Mara didn't scream. She couldn't. She just ran, her legs barely obeying, the mud grabbing at her feet. But when she reached the steps, the door slammed shut by itself. The porch light blinked once, twice, and then went out. Inside, something began to bark. The thing that watches. The sound of barking inside the house shouldn't have made sense. Mara had just held his body, cold, still, but there it was, the same bark, muffled through the walls, too deep to be an echo, too alive to be memory. Her body moved on instinct. She gripped the doorknob and twisted. Locked. She pounded her fists against the wood. "Buddy!" she cried. "Buddy, baby, it's me!" The barking stopped. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The wind, the creaking of the trees, even the night seemed to hold its breath. Then softly from the other side of the door came scratching. Slow, careful, deliberate. She pressed her ear against the wood. The scratches traced upward, like fingers climbing toward the latch. "Who's there?" she whispered. Something whispered back. Not a voice exactly, more like the shape of one. A sound trying to remember how to speak. "Amara!" She stumbled back, flashlight trembling in her grip. "Who are you?" The door handle began to turn on its own. Slow, creaking rotations back and forth, testing her fear. And then came a whimper, a small, desperate sound that was unmistakable. It was Buddy. It had to be. He sounded scared, like he used to when thunder rolled in. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Mara slid the key from her pocket and unlocked the door. It opened only a crack before the smell hit her. Wet fur, rot, and something sour. Something old. Buddy stood there. At least, what looked like Buddy. He tilted his head, eyes too wide, pupils too black, the whites gone completely. His fur dripped as though he'd been standing in rain, but the ground outside was dry. His mouth hung open, tongue limp, and when he stepped forward, his nails dragged across the floor with a slow, scraping sound. "Buddy," she breathed. He wagged his tail once, mechanical, and then he spoke. It came out broken, like a tape winding down. "Where were you?" Mara staggered backward, her hand flying to her mouth. The sound came from him, but not through his mouth. It seemed to leak from the air itself, from the walls, from her own head. "Buddy, you're..." He stepped closer. Behind him, through the open door, she could see the yard, the shed, and another shape standing in the darkness where his body had been. The same tall figure from before, its head bent slowly, almost affectionately. Buddy turned his head toward it, And when he looked back at her, the thing outside moved its head exactly the same way. They were mirrors. Mara dropped the flashlight. It rolled, beams spinning across the floor until it caught the reflection of both figures, Buddy and the thing, each staring with the same dark, empty eyes. A voice whispered again, from everywhere. "You brought it home." The lights in the house began to flicker. Once, twice. Then everything went black. Her scream never made it outside. What follows? When the lights returned, they didn't come back all at once. They pulsed, dim, flickering waves, breathing through the house like a dying heart. Mara was lying on the floor, her body rigid, every nerve braced for the sound she expected to hear. The scraping nails, the whisper that wasn't human, but all she heard was silence. Then, a drip. She turned her head slowly. A dark line ran from the kitchen door to her hand. It glistened under the half-light. Mud, she thought at first, until she smelled it. Iron. She crawled to her knees, breath shuddering, eyes darting to the door. Buddy was gone. The door stood open again, swinging in the wind. Buddy? Nothing, but the house felt occupied. The air trembled faintly, as though someone had just whispered and the words still hung invisible. Her gaze fell to the floor. The mud trail wasn't just leading in, it led around, circling the table, looping the hallway, like something pacing. And then she saw it, in the reflection of the window above the sink. Not her, but him, Buddy, sitting perfectly still, watching her. She spun around, heart in her throat. The kitchen was empty. The reflection smiled. Not a dog smile, her smile. She stumbled backward, crashing into the counter. Her mind scrambled for logic. Hallucination, shock. She'd found him dead. The whisper returned, closer this time, curling around her like breath. "It remembers what you loved." Mara froze. The reflection of the dog tilted its head again. And behind him, the tall figure leaned close, its face folding into shapes that shouldn't exist. Then she remembered the dream, the one that had haunted her since they moved into the house. She'd seen the same shadow back then, standing at the tree line, always watching, always waiting. She'd thought it was her imagination, but it wasn't. Buddy had barked at that same tree every night since. He'd been warning her. The voice deepened, threading through her thoughts. "It doesn't want you. It wants through you." Something cold pressed against the back of her neck. The temperature in the room plummeted. In the reflection, Buddy began to dissolve, his fur peeling into ash, his eyes hollowing to black pits that seemed to stretch into infinity. And from within that darkness, a shape began to crawl. Long fingers first, then a face. Her face distorted and pale, blinking in confusion. Mara screamed, turning away, but the sound didn't leave her mouth. The voice spoke in its place. "You called it home." The lights flared once, blinding white, and then went out completely. When the neighbors found the house days later, the back door was open, muddy footprints scattered through the kitchen. The dog's body was gone. So was Mara. Only the mirror in the kitchen remained untouched. On its surface, faintly fogged from the inside, were two sets of prints, one small, one shaped like hands. And if you looked long enough, really looked, you could swear you saw something move behind the glass, watching, waiting, smiling. The Watch in the Woods. The year was 1997, and the town of Pine Hollow sat nestled between stretches of pine forest and a forgotten railway. It wasn't much more than a few streets, a gas station, and a diner that smelled permanently of coffee and smoke. 12-year-old Cody Miller had lived there his whole life. His world was quiet, An endless cycle of cracked sidewalks, distant train whistles, and the constant hum of crickets after dark. One late afternoon, as the sun began to fade behind the trees, Cody wandered into the woods behind his house. He wasn't supposed to go too far. His mom always warned him, the forest keeps things that don't belong. But curiosity pulled him deeper that day, past the rusted fence and into the hollow where the air felt heavier, quieter. That's where he saw it. A watch, half buried beneath a layer of dead leaves. Its silver surface caught the last sliver of sunlight, glinting faintly. It wasn't like any watch he'd seen before. Old-fashioned, its face cracked, hands unmoving at 3:12. Still, something about it felt special, important. He slipped it onto his wrist. The second it touched his skin, the forest seemed to exhale, a slow, low sound, like the wind dragging through branches. Cody froze. The woods looked the same, but the shadows seemed thicker somehow. When he returned home, the kitchen light flickered. His mom stood by the stove stirring soup. "Look what I found," Cody said, holding up his wrist. She glanced over, brow furrowed. "Found what, sweetie?" "The watch," he said, confused. "Right here." His dad looked up from his newspaper. "You mean your wrist?" Cody laughed nervously and pointed again. "No, the watch. Can't you?" But they both stared at him like he was joking. His mom smiled uncertainly, then went back to her soup. That night, Cody couldn't sleep. The ticking sound started around midnight. Slow at first, then faster, like a heartbeat. He pressed his ear to his wrist, but the watch's hands hadn't moved. Still, the sound was there, deep in his bones. He tried taking it off, but the clasp wouldn't budge. It felt warm against his skin, almost pulsing. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. The world felt slightly wrong. People moved slower. His parents repeated phrases without realizing it. "Did you feed the dog? Did you feed the dog?" The same words, same tone. Cody started seeing shapes in the corners of rooms, reflections that didn't match his movements. The ticking grew louder whenever he looked in the mirror. He went to his friend Ben's house to show him. "You don't see it?" Cody asked, panic in his voice. Ben just shook his head. "You're scaring me, dude." The next day at school, no one talked to him. Not ignored, more like they didn't notice him at all. His teacher called attendance and skipped his name entirely. When he raised his hand, she looked straight through him. That night, Cody's parents didn't come to his room. He called out, once, twice, but no answer. When he went downstairs, the house was empty. Plates sat on the table, soup still steaming, but no one was there. The watch ticked faster. He ran outside, yelling for help, but the town was silent. No cars, no lights in the windows. Just the sound of the wind through the trees. He looked down at his wrist, the hands now moving backward, slowly, deliberately. Cody stumbled into the woods, following the same path where he'd found it. The trees loomed larger now, darker. The air buzzed with the sound of unseen insects. When he reached the hollow, everything stopped. No wind, no sound, no time. He sat down on a fallen log, breathing hard, the ticking loud enough to drown out his thoughts. He tried shouting again, for his mom, his dad, anyone. But his voice didn't echo. It didn't go anywhere. In the fading light, he saw movement. Shapes between the trees. Not people exactly. Shadows wearing faces that looked almost familiar. One of them turned toward him, and for a split second, it had his father's eyes. Then it was gone. Cody looked down. The watch had finally stopped. Its hands rested again at 3:12. He waited there in the silence, unsure how long it had been. Hours, maybe days. The forest didn't change. Time didn't move. When a search party finally came through weeks later, they found nothing but Cody's bicycle leaning against the fence line. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just a faint indentation in the dirt where someone might have sat for a very, very long time. Some nights people in Pine Hollow say they hear faint ticking coming from the woods. And if you listen long enough, just long enough, you might almost hear a boy's voice calling for someone who can't hear him anymore. If anyone finds this, I just need you to know I didn't imagine it. It started with the noises, faint at first, soft footsteps, like someone pacing the hallway outside my room. I thought it was my neighbor again, but when I checked, the hallway was empty, just my own door shut tight. I told myself it was the pipes or the wind or anything that didn't involve someone standing there. It happened again the next night and the one after that. Then, nothing. Total silence. For the first time in weeks, I fell asleep without fear. But when I woke up, the city was gone. Not destroyed, just emptied, like everyone had vanished at once. Cars stood in the middle of the road, engines cold, doors open. TVS flickered static behind dusty windows. There were half-eaten dinners on tables. The air smelled wrong, like rain and electricity, but sharper, almost metallic. I shouted until my throat hurt. No one answered. Days passed. The sun rises, but it doesn't feel right anymore. No birds, no wind, just me and the quiet. I started scavenging for food and water. That's when I found her. She was in a store, sitting behind the counter with a baseball bat. She looked human enough, dirty hair, cracked lips, eyes too wide. But when she saw me, she smiled like she'd been waiting. Her name is Lily. She told me there were others, survivors, living on the edge of the city. Said they'd found a way to stay safe from whatever had taken everyone else. I didn't ask too many questions. I just followed. The silence was unbearable, and I needed to hear another voice. The city thinned into fields, burnt-out cars and weeds choking the highway. Then we reached them, a group of people around a fire. They all turned at once when we arrived, not in surprise, but in recognition. Lily whispered something I didn't catch, and one of them, a tall man with a scar that didn't look like it came from anything human, walked up to me. He stared into my face like he was looking through it. "Welcome home," he said. I tried to ask what he meant, but then I noticed something. His shadow. It bent the wrong way. The firelight behind him twisted, stretching toward me instead of away. That's when I realized they weren't breathing. I wanted to run, but Lily caught my arm. Her skin was cold, like touching static before a lightning strike. "You'll get used to it," she said softly. "It's quieter this way." I don't remember how long I stayed there. Time isn't right anymore. The days don't end. They just fade. The tribe doesn't eat, doesn't sleep. They just watch me. Sometimes they talk among themselves in whispers that don't sound like words at all. Last night, I asked Lily what happened to the world. "You were the last to dream," she said. "Now you're awake with us." I don't know what that means, but I can feel it now. Something in my chest slowing down. My heart, my breath, maybe both. If you find this letter, leave the city. Don't listen when they call you. Don't look too long into the shadows. They'll think you're one of them. The night shift, breaking rule 7. Ethan thought working nights at a hotel would be boring. He was wrong. The Hollow Pines Hotel had a strange stillness at night. Not the calm, peaceful kind, but the kind that made the air feel heavier, like the building itself was holding its breath. On his first shift, the day manager, Marla, handed him a clipboard. "Everything you need is on there," she said flatly, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. When Ethan glanced down, he saw a list of rules. They looked ridiculous. Still, Marla didn't seem to be joking. "Don't take them lightly," she warned. Then she left him alone in the dimly lit lobby. The rules: do not enter room 13 after midnight. Do not book guests into room 13. If a little girl with bloody clothes shows up, give her a lollipop and tell her all the rooms are booked. If the lights in the main hallway turn off at 3 a.m., leave the front desk and do not return until the lights come back on. If you hear noises coming from the hallway, ignore them. If an old man in a black suit calls the phone and calls you by name, hang up immediately. Ignore screams from room 6. Do not enter when you hear them. Ethan shook his head, laughing nervously. Yeah, sure. Ghosts, bloody kids, and spooky phone calls. Real funny 12:40 a.m. The front door creaked open, letting in a cold wind that smelled faintly of rot. A little girl stood there, pale skin, bloody nightgown, bare feet. Her voice was soft, fragile. Do you have any rooms? Ethan's throat tightened. For a second, he forgot how to breathe. His eyes darted to the clipboard. Rule number 3. Hands trembling, he reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a lollipop left by the previous clerk. All the rooms are booked, sweetheart, he managed. The girl's lips twitched into a small smile. Then she turned and vanished. No footsteps, no sound. Just gone. Ethan didn't question it. He didn't move until the clock struck 1. 3 a.m. The lobby lights flickered, then went out. Ethan didn't hesitate this time. He remembered the rule. He stood, grabbed his flashlight, and walked into the small back office, shutting the door behind him. From the other side came footsteps, slow, uneven, dragging. He held his breath as something heavy scraped across the floor, then whispering, faint, desperate. When the lobby lights came back on, the sound stopped instantly. He waited another minute before stepping back out. The lobby looked unchanged, except for the wet footprints that led from the elevator to room 13. 3:27 a.m. The phone rang. Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't want to answer, but he had to make sure it wasn't a guest. He picked it up. Hello? There was only static, then a low, rasping voice. Hello, Ethan. He froze. How do you... He slammed the receiver down, his hands shaking. 4:11 a.m. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then the sound grew louder. A woman screaming, "Help!" It was coming from room 6. Ethan's blood ran cold. He looked at the clipboard. Rule number 7. He sat perfectly still behind the desk, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the hallway. The screams turned into pounding against the inside of the door. "Help me," he whispered to himself. "It's not real." It's not real. Then silence. For the rest of the night, nothing else happened. When dawn came, he sighed in relief. He'd made it. He followed every rule. 5:58 a.m. Marla arrived just as the sun started to rise. She smiled faintly when she saw him. "You did good," she said. "You made it through the night." "Yeah," he said. She chuckled weakly and walked toward the back office. "You get used to it." But something gnawed at Ethan's thoughts. The screams. They'd sounded real, desperate. He tried to shake it off, but as Marla stepped away, he found himself staring down the hallway. At room 6, the door was slightly open. He swallowed. "Just a peek," he muttered, "just to prove it was nothing." 6:03 a.m. He approached slowly. The air around room 6 felt cold. He pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. The room was dark, curtains drawn, lights off. "Hello?" he whispered. The bed was soaked in blood, deep red, almost black. The carpet squelched beneath his shoes. He took a step closer. Then he saw her. A woman's body lay across the bed, eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-scream. And on the wall, written in blood, "You broke the rule!" Ethan stumbled backward, gasping. The door slammed shut behind him. From the darkness came a voice, the same little girl's voice whispering right next to his ear. "You shouldn't have come in." The lights flickered once. Then the screaming began again. And this time, he was the one inside room 6. The night shift. Ethan never liked night shifts, but after months of searching for work, he wasn't about to be picky. The Hollow Pines Hotel wasn't much, a 3-story building sitting on the edge of town, with wallpaper that peeled at the corners and a faint smell of mildew in every hallway. When he arrived for his first shift, the day manager, a woman in her 50s named Marla, looked exhausted. She handed him an old clipboard with a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Read the rules before your shift," she said. And don't break them. Ethan laughed softly. Rules? Like what? No free breakfast after midnight? Marla didn't laugh. She just stared at him for a long moment, her face pale and drawn. Just read them, Ethan. I'll see you in the morning. She left before he could ask anything else. The rules, Ethan sat behind the front desk and flipped through the clipboard. The pages were yellowed, the ink smudged, and at the top, written in blocky handwriting, it read, Hotel Night Shift Rules. Do not enter room 13 after midnight. Do not book guests into room 13. If a little girl with bloody clothes shows up, give her a lollipop and tell her all the rooms are booked. If the lights in the main hallway turn off at 3 a.m., leave the front desk and do not return until the lights come back on. If you hear noises coming from the hallway, ignore them. If an old man in a black suit calls the phone and calls you by name, hang up immediately. Ignore screams from room 6. Do not enter when you hear them. He chuckled to himself. What is this, a prank? Still, the old hotel creaked and groaned like a dying animal. And even though he told himself it was a joke, he couldn't shake the chill running up his spine. 12:47 a.m. The lobby clock ticked louder than it should have. Ethan leaned back in the chair, sipping cheap coffee, trying not to think about the weird list. Then, ding! The elevator opened. A little girl stepped out. Her dress was white, or had been once. Now it was splattered with something dark. Blood. Her bare feet left faint red prints on the old carpet. Ethan froze. Excuse me, she said softly, her voice trembling like static through an old radio. Do you have any rooms? Ethan's heart thudded against his ribs. He looked down at the clipboard, his finger trembling over rule number 3. He fumbled in the drawer until he found a dusty jar with a few lollipops inside. He handed her one, whispering, All rooms are booked. The girl smiled, too wide. Then she was gone. Just gone. Not a sound, not a step. The elevator was empty again. 3 a.m. The lobby lights flickered, then died, pitch black. Ethan remembered rule number 4. He stood up so fast he knocked over his coffee. Every instinct screamed, don't move, but the rule was clear. He stepped out of the front desk area, into the small staff lounge, and waited in the darkness. From the lobby came the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging, then whispering. Dozens of voices overlapping, too quiet to make out. When the lights finally blinked back on, the whispers stopped. The coffee stain on the desk was gone, but a set of wet footprints led from the front door to room 13. 3:27 a.m. The phone rang. Ethan jumped. He hesitated, staring at it. It rang again. He picked it up. Hello? The line hissed softly. Then a deep, gravelly voice said, Good evening, Ethan. He froze. How do you know my... Click. He slammed the receiver down, heart hammering. Rule number 6. He didn't touch the phone again. 4 a.m. screaming. High-pitched, raw, desperate, coming from room 6. Help me! Please! He stood in the hallway, staring at the door. The screams got louder. It sounded like someone was being torn apart inside. Ethan's hand hovered over the knob. He wanted to help. He needed to help. But then, bang! The door shuddered. Something inside slammed against it, over and over. He stumbled back, remembering the rule. Do not enter room 6. He ran back to the front desk, clutching the clipboard like a talisman. 5:55 a.m. The sun began to rise outside, the lobby filled with pale light. Everything was quiet again. When Marla arrived, Ethan stood waiting, pale, shaking, eyes bloodshot. She looked at him, then at the clipboard on the counter. You made it through the first night, she said softly. What the hell is this place? He asked, voice cracking. Marla didn't answer. She only smiled faintly and reached for the clipboard. Most people don't, she murmured, turning the page. Ethan frowned. Don't what? She flipped to a second sheet he hadn't noticed before. At the top, scrawled in the same handwriting, new rule added, effective immediately, 8. Do not trust Marla. The clock that shouldn't tick. When Jacob saw the online listing, he almost scrolled right past it. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. No photo, no description, no details. Just that line. He clicked out of curiosity more than anything else. The seller lived only 2 towns over, and the pickup instructions were simple. Leave the dollar in the mailbox, take the clock from the porch. It sounded like a scam, but Jacob, a 25-year-old who spent too much time restoring old junk for fun, couldn't resist a challenge. He imagined a cracked glass cover or worn-out gear, something he could bring back to life with a bit of patience. So that evening, he drove out to the address. The house and the clock. The house looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, yard overgrown. The porch creaked under his weight. There it was, the clock. A tall, narrow wooden frame, hand-carved with intricate patterns that spiraled in on themselves. It looked centuries old, like something that belonged in a forgotten manor. The pendulum inside gleamed faintly under the porch light. Jacob dropped the dollar into the rusted mailbox slot and carried the clock to his car. It was heavier than he expected, and when he placed it on the back seat, for just a moment, he swore the pendulum swung on its own, even though the clock wasn't wound. Night 1, back in his apartment, Jacob cleaned the clock up and hung it on the empty living room wall. He liked how it filled the space. When he wound it, the mechanism came to life smoothly. The second hand moved perfectly. The pendulum ticked, steady and clear. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was almost soothing. He went to bed smiling, proud of his $1 miracle. That night, he dreamed of something moving behind the carved patterns, like eyes watching from the wood. Night 2. The ticking was louder. Too loud. Jacob woke around 2:13 a.m. and thought maybe he'd overwound it. The sound echoed through the whole apartment. When he went to check, the clock's hands were spinning. Slowly but without stopping, around and around. He reached up to stop the pendulum. When he touched it, everything went silent. No ticking, no refrigerator hum, not even the sound of his own breathing. And then the clock chimed, but instead of bells, it was a whisper, a single word he couldn't quite make out. Something between his name and a sigh. Then as suddenly as it started, it was over. Jacob backed away, shaking his head. "Must be tired," he muttered and went back to bed. Night 3. He didn't remember falling asleep, but woke up on the couch, facing the clock. It was 3:47 a.m. The hands were moving normally again, but now the carved wooden frame seemed different. Some of the swirls looked deeper, almost like they'd been carved overnight. He leaned closer. The grooves formed what looked like a face, distorted, screaming, hidden among the spirals. He stumbled back. The pendulum swung harder, the ticking faster, louder. The entire room seemed to pulse with it, each beat matching his heartbeat until he couldn't tell the difference. And behind the ticking, whispers from inside the clock. He covered it with a sheet. Night 4. Jacob couldn't sleep. He tried moving the clock to the balcony, but every time he turned away, it would somehow be back on the wall. He started hearing the ticking even outside his apartment. In his car, at the grocery store, even in the shower. People around him began to look strange. The cashier at the store blinked wrong, both eyelids closing sideways. A jogger across the street froze mid-step for a full minute. Everywhere the world felt slightly off, like a dream he couldn't wake from. That night he lost control. He tore the clock from the wall and hurled it into the trash outside. The ticking stopped instantly. He laughed in relief and went to bed. The morning after Jacob woke up to sunlight streaming through his window. Everything was calm, quiet. The clock was gone. His living room was still. He smiled. It must have been stress, a hallucination, a bad dream. But when he looked outside, the sky wasn't right. It was too blue, a uniform, sterile blue like paint. The trees moved in slow, jerky motions. And the people on the street weren't moving naturally. They walked in perfect rhythm, Every step in sync, every turn identical. Their faces didn't move when they spoke. A man waved to him from across the street, his hand bent the wrong way. Jacob froze. His phone buzzed. A notification. It was an online listing. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The attached photo showed his living room wall. The clock was hanging there again. The truth ticks. Panicking, Jacob smashed his phone. But the ticking started again. Faint at first, then louder, as if coming from inside the walls. He tore through the apartment trying to find it. Each door led to another version of the same room. Same wall, same clock, same impossible sky outside. He tried to scream, but his voice didn't make a sound. And then he noticed the reflection in the clock's glass. It wasn't his face. It was the wooden face from the carvings, twisting, writhing, grinning. The pendulum stopped. The clock chimed 13 times. Weeks later, a new online post appeared. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. A woman scrolling through her phone frowned at the strange photo attached. A blurry image of a young man standing in front of an old clock, face hidden in shadow. Curious, she clicked buy. The clock that found her. The clock arrived 3 days after she clicked buy. Its wood was darker than the photo showed, almost black, and the carvings seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The seller had shipped it in an unmarked box. No note, no return address. Just the clock, ticking softly as if it had never stopped. Her name was Lena, a 23-year-old antique enthusiast who liked strange things. Broken dolls, dusty typewriters, forgotten music boxes. But this clock, this one felt alive. When she hung it on her apartment wall, it immediately started ticking. She hadn't even wound it. Night 1. At 3:07 a.m., Lena woke to the sound of the ticking. It wasn't just loud. It echoed as though her small apartment had become a hollow space. The pendulum swung like a heartbeat. She sat up, and in the faint moonlight, the clock's face seemed to shimmer. The Roman numerals bled together, warping into symbols she didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed beside her. Unknown number. Do not let it stop. She blinked, stared at the message, and before she could respond, her phone died. When she looked back at the clock, the pendulum had stopped mid-swing. The room grew very cold, and then she heard it, a whisper right behind her ear. You shouldn't have bought it. The man in the mirror. The next morning, Lena convinced herself it was a dream. But when she walked past her mirror, she froze. For a brief second, her reflection wasn't her. It was a man. Tired eyes, stubble. Same expression of confusion and fear. He mouthed something. Run! She spun around. No one there. When she looked back, her reflection was normal. That's when she noticed the clock's ticking had slowed. And every time it ticked, the reflection's lips moved. Night 2. The whispers returned, not one voice this time. Dozens, layered, frantic, circling her. They came from the walls, from the floorboards, from inside the clock. She tried to record it on her phone, but all she got was static. And under the static, a faint sound, a voice male saying her name. Lena, it's me, Jacob, the man from the listing. That name wouldn't leave her mind. Lena searched the online post again, hoping to find the seller's information, but the listing was gone. Instead, a new one had appeared. $1 clock. It came back. The attached photo showed a man standing in front of the same clock. His face was partly hidden by shadow, but she recognized him, the man from her mirror. Jacob. The world behind the clock. That night at exactly midnight, the clock began to chime. Not 12 times, 13. Each chime made the air ripple, the lights flicker. On the 13th strike, the clock's glass cracked, and through the fracture, Lena saw movement, as though something was behind the glass, pacing. When she touched it, her fingers didn't hit the surface. They passed through. And then she was falling. The other side. Lena landed hard on cold stone. When she stood up, she was no longer in her apartment. The sky above her was the same sterile blue Jacob had seen. Uniform, artificial, wrong. The buildings looked like wax models of real ones, slightly melted at the edges. The air ticked softly, and in the distance she saw him, a man standing under a flickering streetlight, staring at her as if he'd seen a ghost. He looked just like her reflection, the man from the mirror. "Jacob?" she whispered. He nodded cautiously. "You bought the clock. The rules of the world. That isn't ours." He told her everything about the listing, the ticking, the day he threw the clock away and woke up here. "This place," he said, voice low, "is a copy. It looks like our world, but it isn't. The people here, they move in loops. The sky never changes. Time doesn't pass. And the clocks, they feed on us." "Feed?" Lena asked. "They pull us in. Every time someone throws one away or breaks it, it resets, starts again, looks for the next buyer. And once you're here, you don't leave." Lena frowned. "Then how do we stop it?" Jacob smiled weakly. "That's the thing. You don't days past, or what felt like days." Lena and Jacob searched for a way out. Every road led back to the same intersection. Every door opened into another copy of her apartment. And in every copy, there was a clock on the wall ticking, each one showing a different time. Jacob began to act strangely. He'd disappear for hours. He'd stare at her reflection instead of her. He'd whisper things when he thought she was asleep. Numbers, times, names she didn't know. Then one night, she woke up to find him gone. The only thing left was a note. "When the 13th chime rings again, wake up." Moments later, the clocks around her began ticking faster. Tick, tick, tick. They all struck 13 at once. The final hour. Lena opened her eyes. She was in her apartment. Morning light, coffee cup on the counter. The clock was gone. It worked. She was free. She smiled, shaking her head. "Just a nightmare," she whispered. Her phone buzzed. A new message. "Jacob, don't trust the morning." Her blood ran cold. She looked outside. The sky was blue, too blue. And down on the street, the people walked in perfect rhythm, every movement synchronized. She looked at her reflection in the window and saw Jacob's face staring back. An online listing appears a week later. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The 13th hour. The sky never changed. That's what Jacob hated most. He and Lena had been wandering the false world for what felt like weeks, maybe months. The sun never set, and the shadows never moved. The air ticked faintly, like an invisible heartbeat pulsing beneath reality. They had found other people, but none of them spoke. They moved mechanically, repeating the same gestures, walking the same paths. When touched, they dissolved into dust and reappeared elsewhere, like rewound film. The world was a clock, and they were trapped inside it. The Echo Town. They stayed in a house on the edge of the silent town, a place Jacob swore looked identical to the house where he'd found the clock. Every room had a clock in it. Every clock showed a different time. Lena spent her days writing on the walls with charcoal, mapping each street, noting where loops began and ended. Jacob watched her from the corner of his eye. She had stopped blinking as much, and sometimes her reflection didn't follow her movements. He didn't mention it. Neither of them did. The stranger one morning, if it could be called morning, a knock echoed at their door. No one ever knocked here. When Jacob opened it, a man stood outside dressed in old clothes, his expression calm and eerily familiar. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded. The man smiled faintly. "The same as you." A guest of time, Lena appeared behind Jacob. "What do you mean?" The stranger stepped inside, glancing at the nearest clock. "You broke the cycle once," he said to Jacob. "You threw the clock away, remember? You woke up, but you didn't wake up in your world. You woke up in mine." Lena frowned. "Yours?" He nodded. "Each time someone destroys the clock, they don't end the curse. They inherit it. The world resets around them. Every new owner becomes the next keeper. The next clockmaker, Jacob's stomach twisted. "Then who are you?" The man smiled, eyes dark and hollow. "The one who sold it to you." The revelation. The clocks in the house began to chime, one after another. A rolling wave of mechanical noise that built into a deafening roar. The air rippled, the walls bending like glass. The stranger walked calmly through it. "You've seen how it feeds. Every tick is a second stolen. Every chime a new reality spun. You can't destroy it, Jacob. You can only pass it on." Lena grabbed Jacob's hand. "We don't have to play this game." The man tilted his head. "Then end it." "But you won't like what that means." Jacob shouted over the noise. "How do we stop it?" The stranger stepped close enough that Jacob could see the hollow gear-like patterns in his eyes. "You become it." And with that, he vanished, leaving only the faint scent of oil and dust behind. The 13th chime. That night, the clocks all stopped at once. The silence was worse than the ticking. Lena sat in front of the grand clock, the one they brought with them from the center of town, tracing the cracks on its face. "He was lying," she whispered. "There has to be a way out." Jacob didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the pendulum. It wasn't moving. Then faintly it began to swing, on its own. The clock's hands spun violently, and from within came a familiar whisper. "Jacob? Lena? Time's run out." The pendulum burst into flame, burning a circle of light on the floor. Through it, they could see another world. Lena's apartment. Real, alive, imperfect. Home. Jacob reached for her. "We can go back." But Lena didn't move. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the reflection in the glass. It wasn't hers. It was his. The twist. Jacob looked closer and saw himself inside the clock. Not standing beside it, but behind the glass, pounding on it, silently screaming. The version of him outside turned slowly toward Lena. "Do you hear it?" he asked softly. "The ticking?" Lena stepped back. "Jacob?" He smiled, the same faint, calm smile the stranger had. "The 13th hour always needs a keeper." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small brass key, the clock's winding key, and placed it in her trembling hand. "You're next," he whispered. The world shattered. Lena woke in her apartment, morning light. Her hands were covered in ash. The clock was on the wall, perfect, unbroken, ticking quietly. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The attached photo showed her living room, but this time she was in it, smiling faintly, one hand on the clock, the other holding a brass key. And in the reflection of the glass, deep behind the turning gears, Jacob watched. Forever. In another town, another night, a young man scrolls through listings, half asleep. He stops at one that catches his eye. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. He chuckles. What's the worst that could happen? And clicks buy. Forgotten ticking. Jacob had been missing for 3 months. His brother Ethan stopped believing it was just a disappearance after the second week. Jacob wasn't the type to vanish. Not without a word, not without leaving a trace. The police had found nothing. His car was still in the parking lot outside his apartment. Keys inside, door unlocked. His rent was overdue. The only odd thing noted in the report was a circular mark burned into the living room wall, about the size of a clock. They chalked it up to vandalism. But Ethan knew better. Jacob's life had stopped, literally. The apartment, Ethan got the spare key from the landlord. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it. Stillness. The air was cold, the kind of cold that felt deliberate. The living room was almost empty. One wall was bare except for a faint outline where something used to hang. He crouched closer. The wallpaper there was discolored, singed in a perfect circle, and faintly under the quiet hum of the city outside, he heard it. Tick, tick, tick. He froze. The sound wasn't coming from any visible clock. It was inside the wall. The file Ethan took Jacob's old laptop from the desk. It still worked. On the desktop was a single folder titled "Don't Open." Classic Jacob humor. Inside were photos, dozens of them. They were all of the same object, a tall, ornate wooden clock. Some were close-ups of the carvings, others were screenshots of a web listing. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The last photo was different. It was a blurry image of Jacob standing in his living room, half turned toward the camera, one hand touching the clock's glass. His reflection wasn't his. The messages Ethan scrolled through Jacob's emails. Most were normal, repair shop updates, work correspondence. But near the end, a pattern appeared. Dozens of messages from anonymous addresses, all with the same subject line: "Do not let it stop." The body of each email was blank, all except one. It read, "When the 13th chime sounds, you'll understand." Ethan stared at it for a long time before shutting the laptop. Outside, a distant church bell rang. He counted the chimes. 12. Then faintly one more. The seller. Jacob's search history was obsessive. He'd looked for antique clock repair shops, forums about time anomalies, and urban legends. One link led Ethan to a long-deleted forum thread titled, "The Clock That Shouldn't Tick." Anyone else seen it? The comments were frantic, disconnected. "Mine won't stop ticking even after I took out the gears. I see people outside that aren't real. Every time I sleep, I wake up in the same place. It's not a clock, it's a door." The final post simply said, "If you bought it, you've already wound it." Then a user named @Clockkeeper13 replied, "New cycle begins." New keeper chosen, Ethan clicked the username. The profile picture loaded. A photograph of Jacob, the reflection. Ethan started dreaming about the clock. Sometimes it was hanging on his bedroom wall. Sometimes it floated in a dark room, pendulum swinging like a heartbeat. And always at the edge of his vision, he saw someone standing inside the glass, trying to speak. He couldn't hear the words, but the expression was unmistakable. It was Jacob. He woke one night to find his mirror fogged from the inside. Across it, written in dripping letters, 13. The antique shop, desperate for answers. Ethan tracked the original listing to a small antique shop just outside town. The doorbell jingled as he entered, but no one was there. The shop was full of clocks, every kind imaginable. Mantle clocks, cuckoo clocks, grandfather clocks, all ticking, all slightly out of sync. At the counter sat a book, open to a page labeled Ownership Lineage. Names filled the list in careful handwriting. Charles Harrow, 1891. Edith Moore, 1922. Dale Carter, 1954. Jacob Harlow, 2025. The next line was blank. He stared at the space beneath Jacob's name as the pen beside the book slowly rolled toward him. The clocks grew louder. The 13th hour. When he turned to leave, the shop's front door was gone. Only a wall of wooden gears remained, living, shifting machinery, pulsing with light from behind its seams. The clocks all struck midnight together. Then, one final echoing chime. 13. The pendulums froze. Ethan stepped backward, trembling. "Jacob!" From somewhere deep in the ticking silence, a voice whispered back, "It's your turn." The sound came from the mirror behind the counter. Jacob's face staring out, smiling faintly, one hand pressed against the glass. Ethan lifted his hand to the surface. The glass felt warm. Then it pulled him in. Days later, the antique shop reopened. The counter gleamed as though freshly polished. A new listing appeared online. $1 clock, something is wrong with it. This time, the attached photo showed a man in his 20s, brown hair, nervous eyes, standing in a dusty shop, smiling faintly beside an old clock. The name below the photo read, Ethan Harlow, and somewhere far away, another clock began to tick. The clockmaker's legacy. The shop was silent. No ticking, no creaking, no sound at all, as if time itself was holding its breath. Dust hung motionless in the air. In the center of the room, Ethan Harlow stood before the great clock, taller than any man, its frame carved with spirals and eyes that seemed to follow him. He didn't remember how long he'd been there. Somewhere in the distance, he could still hear his brother's voice. "It's your turn," but the words had started to fade, blending with the low hum of the gears. He was becoming part of the rhythm. The clockmaker's journal. Ethan found it hidden beneath the counter, a leather-bound journal covered in wax and soot. The name etched into the cover read, A. W. Harrow, Clockmaker, 1889. Inside were sketches of clocks, pendulums, and strange diagrams that looked more like anatomy than machinery. Gears and vanes intertwined. The final entry was written in hurried ink. "Time is not a line, it is a cage. The keeper does not die. He winds the world, a dry drop of blood marked the page. Beneath it, a faint note in a different hand, one that looked disturbingly familiar. To the next keeper, do not open the 13th hour." Ethan closed the book slowly, but the clock behind him had already started to move. The spiral. The pendulum began to swing. The sound filled the room, deep and resonant, like a heartbeat underwater. Each tick made the light bend slightly, as if the air were folding in on itself. On the wall opposite him, mirrors began to appear, one by one, each showing fragments of other lives. Jacob screaming as he threw the clock away. Lena touching the glass, her eyes hollow. The stranger smiling as the world dissolved around him. Each reflection ticked in time with the pendulum, and in every one of them, Ethan saw the same figure standing in the background. The clockmaker, the truth of the 13th hour. Ethan turned to the great clock. Its hands spun wildly, then stopped on a time that shouldn't exist. 1300. The wood split open like flesh. Behind the gears was not machinery, but a tunnel of shifting light and shadow. A corridor of time itself, pulsing like a living heart. He felt it calling to him. Whispers echoed from the dark. Every keeper builds the next world. Every chime is a rebirth. The 13th hour never ends. He stepped forward, drawn in despite himself. The air smelled of metal, smoke, and something ancient. At the tunnel's end, he saw a workshop, small, candlelit, filled with unfinished clocks. A man stood at the table, turning a key. The same face Ethan had seen in the mirrors. The clockmaker, the origin. The man looked up, eyes like glass. "You've come far, Ethan," he said softly. "Most don't make it this far. Most become echoes." "Who are you?" Ethan whispered. "I built the first clock," the man said. "Not to tell time, but to trap it." He picked up the clock's pendulum, which pulsed faintly with light. "When my wife died, I couldn't bear to let her go. So I built a machine that could freeze the moment before death, hold it forever." He looked around the room, eyes full of sorrow. "But eternity is not a gift. It's a hunger." The clock began to feed on memory, on reality, on the souls of those who touched it. Every time it's destroyed, it starts again. New faces, new worlds, Ethan's voice trembled. "Then how do I end it?" The clockmaker smiled, sad, knowing. "You don't end it, you replace it." The choice. The workshop began to shake. Gears burst from the walls, spinning through the air like razors. The light turned golden, then black. The clockmaker stepped closer and placed a key in Ethan's hand, the same one Jacob once held. "Wind it," he said, "or the world stops. Every second since the first tick depends on it." Ethan stared at the key, heart pounding. "If I don't?" The man smiled faintly. "Then you'll wake up." The gears screamed. The walls split open. Time itself began to tear. Ethan raised the key. The ticking slowed, stopped. For the first time in forever, the world was silent. Then, he turned the key. The end-of-time light flooded the workshop. The world folded in on itself like paper. When the brightness faded, Ethan was standing in a small antique shop. Normal sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped outside. The clocks were still. On the counter sat a single note in his own handwriting. To whoever finds this, the clock is repaired. The curse is broken. Do not wind it again. He smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. Finally, it was over. He walked out of the shop into the morning air. For the first time in centuries, the sky was a real blue, soft and imperfect. The shop door closed behind him. Inside, the silence lingered, until somewhere in the back room, tick, tick, the pendulum began to swing again. Weeks later, a maintenance worker entered the empty shop, cleaning dust from the counters. He found an old clock sitting on a table, beautifully carved, the nameplate reading Harlow and Sons. He smiled to himself. Nice craftsmanship, he murmured. On the back of the clock, a small brass tag read, $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. Yeah, sure, he said, pocketing his coin. Then he wound it once, just to hear it tick. The 13th hour began again.